Well, the Detroit Tigers are imploding, ice dance rules are fake, and my debit card details got stolen from me. How's your week going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Helen, and if you're new here, you may not know that I am an American living in the UK, and I have done since 2018. And if you're not new here, or you know me in person, welcome back. You've heard me talk about this for a while, but we are here to encapsulate all of it, because today, I'm here to tell you that we are almost at the end of the immigration journey. Nope, I'm not leaving. In fact, I just applied for citizenship. Yes, despite the many flaws of this country, and there are many, I've decided to stay here forever. But it is not as simple as saying that I'm just going to move over here and then living over here. Unless you're Ellen DeGeneres and are just very, 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 very rich. No, in fact, it takes a lot of time, effort, and crucially, money in order to be able to secure the right to carry a British passport. So that is what we're going to talk about today. I want to give a big thanks to Evan Ettinger, who is also an American living in the UK, got his British citizenship a few years ago, and documented his journey from a student visa to a work visa to finally citizenship on his channel. I've been watching a lot of his content lately because it's a bit relevant to my journey at the moment. A lot bit, actually. But since my immigration journey carried a little bit of a different path and also took place after a few policy changes that affected the pricing in his video, I thought I'd let you know how exactly I got on with it. And boy, do we have some stuff to talk about today. So without further ado, we'll see how good editing me is at keeping a counter on either side of the screen. I'll mostly be talking about things in pounds, except for the things I paid for in USD, in which case I will tell you what the conversion rate is, because yes, I did do a currency conversion calculation for the exact dates on which I paid for things, just to be the most accurate, because as we all know, the exchange rate is a bit volatile at the moment. When is it not? Let's be honest. So without further ado, let's journey all the way back to 2016, which is not technically where this particular immigration journey starts, but it provides some much needed context. So in spring of 2016, I came over here for a study abroad through my university, who I don't have the best relationship with at the moment, but that is because they've decided to embrace certain leadership. In January 2016, I started my semester abroad through my university. It was my junior year. I had been an Anglophile all my life and was so excited to go. Plus, I had some friends from Tumblr that I was dying to meet. And to be honest, that semester was absolutely life-changing. It really solidified that this was where I wanted to live, but of course, I had to go home and finish out my degree, and who knew if I was ever going to be able to move back and have any sort of motivation to? Well, as it turns out, on that very semester, I met the person who would then become my spouse. To be fair though, we did not start dating until after, but we sort of knew we liked each other anyways. We were friends first. So alas, I finished out that semester and then finished my degree, and then I had to get a job. So throughout all that journey, my now spouse visited me once. I visited over here twice. I then applied and got accepted into the London Film School for 2018-2019. And this is where the actual immigration journey starts. So let's go. In June 2018, I applied for a Tier 4 student visa. I don't know what it's called now, but I got my Tier 4 student visa, which is what you need to come to the UK. I got my CAS, which is what you need to apply for a student visa, in June, and my school took their sweet time doing it because I was not allowed to apply for that visa until 3 months before my projected start date, which is a bit of a tight turnaround time considering how the Home Office just is. We're gonna start the clock. What do we got? So for a Tier 4 student visa, I had to pay $487 or £376.21, plus the immigration health surcharge. Now, this is a yearly fee for immigrants because, you know, we gotta pay for the right to use the NHS, even though those of us who can work, I was not allowed to work on my student visa. We'll get onto that. I had to then pay $315 or £243.45 for the immigration health surcharge. That gave me the right to use the NHS. However, I was only able to actually get the application through at the start of August, and I really needed that visa turned around really fast. So after I got my biometrics on the 13th of August, I then had to pay for the Tier 4 Fast Track Priority Service, which cost a further $294 or £230.35. Plus, I needed to ship all my documents to the consulate in New York and back in really quick time, and that cost an additional $70 or £54.85. Now, I did end up getting a positive decision. Obviously, I got my leave to enter the UK on a student visa. I was only allowed to work under work placement, which my specialist school did not offer. So in addition to paying all of those fees, which added up to a total of £904.86, I also had to save up everything I had earned over the last 6 months and make it last for 12. So, bit of a financial cost. I'll mention some of the other tangential costs that weren't directly visa related, but came with it. For example, the airfare to get to the UK. Shout out to you, Aer Lingus. I love your service. So, everything is great. My degree is mildly stressful to very. So, in the midst of all that, living with my now spouse, we got engaged in April 2019. It was a very happy occasion. We initially planned on a long engagement because we assumed that I would be able to find work right away coming out of my degree to be able to sponsor me. Guess what did not happen? So, after dating for 3 years and being engaged for about 6 months, my spouse and I happily wed in September 2019. We've been married for 6 years now and together almost 10, which is insane. Now, I'm not going to count the cost of the wedding towards this, even though it was a big cost, but getting married meant that I had to apply for the partner spouse visa, or the FLR-M visa. Sorry, the FLR parentheses M visa. Now, that was a whole lot of paperwork. We had to meet an income requirement, which, remember, I wasn't allowed to work, so we were solely relying on my spouses, who thankfully just barely cleared the income requirement. Yes, we love that. We'll get back to that later. So how to get to citizenship from a spouse visa? Well, you have to first apply for one that lasts 2.5 years, apply for another one that lasts 2.5 years if you're on the 5-year route. Once the 5 years is up, you apply for indefinite leave to remain, and then, if you are a spouse technically, you can apply the day after you get it. However, as we'll see later, you'll be too broke to do so. So anyways, spouse visa number 1 costs £1,052.20. I'm assuming that is paying for the fingerprints that I then had to go to Croydon to take. Hooray. But also, I have to pay the immigration health surcharge again. However, this time it's more. One, they raised the fee to £400 per year, so multiply that by 2.5 years. That's £1,000 on top of the actual visa fee. So, I had to pay that. Luckily, the biometrics appointment was free, and then I just had to wait for 2 months in limbo, having a panic attack every other day, waiting for my decision. What does that bring us up to now? Well, I got my spouse visa in October 2019, and that brought my total visa costs over the last 1.5 years to £2,957.06. We're just going to be speaking in pounds, by the way, until this is done, and I'll tell you the final dollar amount later. Everything's fine. I'm here. I can be here for 2.5 years. More importantly, I can work. You know, it's not like there's anything coming in 2020 that could affect us, right? Right? So anyways, yes, we moved out of London in 2020 because it was so expensive, but also a pandemic happened. Luckily, I was allowed to stay. So we moved up to Leeds. We worked for 2.5 years. So then we come up to April 2022, which is when my first spouse visa was set to expire. Now, you are allowed to apply 30 days before your current visa expires. Who knows how long the decision is going to take? In that case, the decision didn't take very long. Now, luckily, the price for the spouse visa hadn't gone up in the 2.5 years. It was another £1,052.20. However, the immigration health surcharge took a steep increase from £400 a year to £624 a year. Now, multiply that by 2.5 years again, that's £1,560. There's no way to pay this monthly, by the way. You have to pay it up front, even though, by the way, I was already paying taxes through my job. I forgot to mention that all of these visas require a ton of paperwork, all of which is contained in these binders. And yes, they do take a lot of mental and physical work and effort and time and and then also, because I need that turnaround real quick, you see, I got a visa appointment on a weekend for an extra cost of £127. Now this time, I was worried that I was gonna have to go down to Croydon, but no, luckily there is a processing center in Leeds, and so I went there. I got my decision in April 2022. I was allowed to stay for another 2.5 years, and we celebrated by going to a Little Mix concert. That's just how the timing worked out. Now, you might say, that's a lot of money to have if you're not rich. You are right. These cost so much. Now, part of the cost of my second spouse visa was covered by having the pandemic payments, if you recall those, that the US citizens got. However, I needed some financial assistance because if you recall from my autism video, I got scammed out of a lot of money. So that was like my visa fund just up in smoke. Through no fault of my own. So I did get some financial assistance with that. I love my family. So, what are we up to after a Tier 4 student visa, spouse visa number 1, and spouse visa number 2? We are at £5,696 and 26 pence. Oh my! But we're not done yet. The spouse visa number 2 only lasts another 2.5 years, and I have indefinite leave to remain staring at me down the barrel. Luckily, there is no immigration health surcharge on that. However, indefinite leave to remain at that point in time cost about £2,400. Now, I don't know about you, but I just don't have a spare £2,400 always lying around. So what that meant is on my income for the next 2.5 years, I had to put aside a certain amount of money per month to make sure that I would not be broke by the time ILR came around. And so I did, and luckily I changed jobs in the middle of that too. However, in autumn 2023, the conservative government decided to do a few things in order to curb immigration, which of course didn't work unless you are not rich. They, in all of their divine wisdom, decided to increase the salary requirement to sponsor a spouse for an ILR from £19,000 a year to £38,000 a year. I just want to say that the median British income is not that high. Luckily for me, 1, because I was already here, I got grandfathered into that, so that didn't apply to me, and 2, even if that didn't happen, I had just swapped jobs, and so my spouse and I jointly met that requirement. Barely. On top of that, they increased the indefinite leave to remain charge from about £2,400 to £2,885. Now, as I mentioned, I had this whole plan set up. I was going to set aside a certain amount of money per month and be really responsible with my spending. And then suddenly I had to factor a almost £500 increase into that. So exciting. I love it so much. So finally, when the time came to apply for indefinite leave to remain, I took some time off work in September 2024 to get the rest of the application together because this really, really cannot be wrong. The other visas can't be wrong, but this really, really, really can't be wrong because otherwise, if I'm refused, I might have to leave the UK or apply for another spouse visa and they won't refund me the money I've already spent. So anyways, yes, September comes around. I submit my ILR application, and that's £2,885. However, we have a Christmas vacation coming up in the States, and therefore I need my passport, like, real soon. I need this decision very soon. Ordinarily, there are 2 options to fast track your immigration. You can either pay £1,000 for 1 day, or you can pay £500 for a 5 days decision. The £500 option for 5 days is not available when indefinite leave to remain. So you either are waiting maybe 6 months, or you can pay £1,000 to have it done in a day. The joys of bureaucracy, we love it so much. Naturally, because I was actually doing pretty well at the time, salary-wise, I decided, yeah, I'll spring for the £1,000 so I can actually go home for Christmas like I've been planning to. So that total visa application was almost £4,000 in one go, and that brings the total up to £9,581 and 26 pence. One of the lovely, lovely things that happened around my application for indefinite leave to remain is that I got a blood clot in my leg the day that I was due to go into my biometrics appointment. I am not missing that biometrics appointment, okay? I did not know it was a blood clot at the time. I was in searing pain, but damn it, we are going into town. I am hobbling my way to get my fingerprints done and my documents submitted and my picture taken because I paid for the 1-day decision and I need that decision now. I have done so much for the home office. I'll go home, I'll sleep it off. Well, I got the decision laid up in bed the next day. Hooray, I have indefinite leave to remain. That's great. The first thing I do with it is spend 10 days in hospital. Now, I love the NHS so much. We should be funding it more. Shout out to all the doctors and nurses and everyone who cared for me. You saved my life. I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm not saying that stress is a factor in clots forming, but I have my suspicions. Anyways, after my blood clot is treated, I'm recovering at home and I use a cane on a daily basis now. Hooray. I can now set my sight on citizenship, the final boss. Now, technically, because I'm a spouse, I don't have to do the typical 12-month waiting period, okay? But I sort of had that internal clock on me anyways. One, because I could save up enough money again, because Lord knows, after every single time I've made a visa application, I've ended up basically broke because it costs so much money. And then I just wanted to have a little bit of financial freedom, you know? My brother decided to get married in August, and I love him very dearly. I'm so happy for him and my new sister-in-law. Shout out to you guys. But it did mean that I had a trip to pay for. And you know what? It just sort of worked out. I was like, I'll pay for the trip, I'll do everything, then I'll come back and pay for citizenship. So that's what I did. So I have spent the past 2 months getting together everything I need for citizenship. This application is a little less stressful than the indefinite leave to remain. For one, it's cheaper. Two, there's not nearly as much documentation required of me. And three, I'm not on any particular timeline. It's just my own self-imposed deadline. And you know what? It's good to have a bit of control over that. This application also requires you to have 2 referees to tell the government that you're a good person, which I have secured. Shout out to you, you know who you are. And so last week I submitted my citizenship application and it cost £1,735. Plus, because you know my fingerprints may have changed since the last 4 times the UK government has required it, you just don't know. I have to go in and get my biometrics done again. This time though, if I want an appointment that is outside of normal working hours, which I do, I have to pay another £60. So that is duly what I have down. As of today, that is where I am at cost-wise. Let's check on the actual total here. And oh, would you look at that? It is now £11,376.26. We are in 5 figures, ladies and gentlemen. And guess what, guys? We're still not done. The next step, when I get approved, I'm gonna say when, not if, when I get approved for citizenship, I then have to have a citizenship ceremony. Now, according to Leeds City Council website, you can do a group ceremony for free, but if you want to have a private ceremony and invite maybe a few more personal friends and colleagues, that is £120. Plus, you do eventually have to apply for a British passport, and that in itself costs £94.50. A cakewalk compared to everything else, right? So let's check in. Let us check in. So after all of that, after I've gone through the Tier 4 student visa, I've done the 2 spouse visas, I have indefinite leave to remain, and I've paid for my citizenship application. After the ceremony and passport, here is the final total cost. I will have paid, by the end of all of this, £11,590.76. Do you know how many vacations I could have gone on with that money? I've still not been to the mainland. There's a lot of parts of the UK that I haven't been able to see. I would like to see family more often, but no. I have to save so much of my income to pay the Home Office these exorbitant fees. Now, I know it's all gonna be worth it in the end. I love my country. I love my spouse so much, but this is exorbitant, right? This is beyond what it actually costs to do these things. The UK government decided to privatize this entire process, make it super expensive for anybody to even pay for these fees, let alone meet their requirements for these fees. I am extremely lucky that I came here when I did, because you can't come here anymore and expect this to be the case. Like, what if you're a student coming over here and you marry your spouse and you want to stay here on a spouse visa? Your income's not going to meet that. What student is getting a job that's like £38,000 a year right out of university, unless you're a master's student? And even then, if you're a master's student, you can't bring your dependents anymore here. University enrollment across the board has just plummeted internationally. It's unfair. It's extremely unfair. And for a lot of students, the number of hours you're allowed to work is capped at 20 a week, which means you can't get well-earning jobs while you are in university. People are being torn apart. Children are being torn apart from their parents just because they don't meet the salary requirement because they work a normal job, or maybe they work a higher skilled job, but they live in the north where salary payments aren't as good. And keep in mind that, like, while I'm trying to save for these visa fees, I am paying for my commute into work, I'm paying rent, I'm paying my bills, I'm paying for groceries, and on top of that, I just want to have some sort of fun while I'm, like, here. I live in this country, I might as well make the most of it. It's insane. It's a lot worse everywhere else, I realize it. I realize I'm extremely lucky that I was able to come here the way I did, especially right now, given the country's attitude toward immigrants. I don't know if you've seen or heard on the news, but there's always been horrific immigrant sentiment in this country, but right now there's a lot of English flags out and Union Jacks out. There's one, like, down my street that makes me feel scared, and, like, I'm a white American. Like, I have huge privilege in this, I fully admit. But if someone comes and talks to me and says, like, the immigrants are, like, making everything worse, what kind of immigrant are you talking about, sir? I know I talked about this in previous videos that I've made. I am happy with where I live. If I was back in the US, we would not be able to survive financially. I'm happy to be where I live culturally. I'm not ungrateful for the life that I live over here. I don't want anyone to mistake that. But the system, the way it's set up, it is trying to keep people out. It's keeping out people who will, you know, be employed on the NHS and be of great help, but also they shouldn't have to be an exceptional person to be able to live where they want to live. Did I just call myself unexceptional? I mean, Mr. Rogers said I'm special just the way I am. It has been a long journey to get here. It's been a hard journey at times. I am extremely grateful for my spouse, for being there with me through every step of this journey. It's affected them as much as it's affected me, especially when I was in the hospital last fall. I mean, we say in sickness and in health, and by Lord, we've done that. I'm extremely grateful. I'm glad to have, you know, been in this relationship for almost a decade again. I can't believe it. I was able to get an autism diagnosis finally at no cost to myself through the NHS. I'm very grateful for that. And they saved my life. And I would have been bankrupt if this had happened to me in the States. And yeah, I'm really grateful. Call me a grifter, but I'm really grateful that I am able to use this system that I have paid an exorbitant amount of money for through my taxes and through these immigration applications, but I'm grateful for what they do. So shout out to the NHS. We love them. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave it today. Thank you so much for watching. I realized this was a bit more off the cuff, and maybe some deep-seated feelings are coming up. I just wanted to share that and, you know, be really honest about what that process has been like for me. The cost and the system in the last 7 years has changed a lot for the worse, financial-wise and requirements-wise, and I do think, unfortunately, it's probably going to get more worse from here. Hopefully, I will be able to have an update before the end of the year, a positive one, that I have citizenship. We're gonna cross our fingers for that. What a Christmas present that would be. I would absolutely love that. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I've probably said that already. If you want to check out my last video, you can do that at the end card. I talk a bit about my travels back to America. Bit fitting that this is following it up. I write monthly blog posts now. You can find those below. I write all the time on Helen-Groothuis.com. You can follow me on BlueSky. It's mainly figure skating stuff at the moment. We just had the Olympic qualifiers, which is where the ice dance comment came from earlier. As for me, I'm doing okay, and I'm happy that I'm getting more creative stuff out this year. So yeah, until the next one, thank you very much for watching. Remember to keep living awesome lives, and I will see you soon. Bye.